North Korea fired multiple short-range ballistic missiles toward the East Sea this morning, ahead of the APEC leaders meeting in Gyeongju next week. This is the regime's first missile launch in more than 5 months, and the first under the Lee Jae-myung administration. Just 2 days after returning from Washington, South Korea's industry minister and the presidential chief of staff for policy headed back to the United States today, as they continue to work on what appears to be the final stage of trade negotiations. U.S. President Donald Trump expressed optimism about upcoming trade talks with China, saying he expects to meet with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping soon in South Korea. He also touted the success of his tariff policies, saying Washington has done well in trade negotiations with South Korea, Japan, and the European Union. Hello and thanks for joining us on Arirang News. North Korea fired short-range ballistic missiles this morning ahead of the APEC leaders meeting in Gyeongju, where dozens of world leaders will be visiting South Korea next week. For more on this, our Kim Do-yeon is on the line with us. Do-yeon, what's the latest?
According to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, North Korea fired short-range ballistic missiles at around 8:10 a.m., the first launch of its kind in more than 5 months. Authorities said the missiles were launched from the regime's Hwanghae-pukto province, which is just south of Pyongyang, and that the missiles seem to have traveled around 350 kilometers northeast. According to local reports, the missiles fell on land instead of the waters off the coast. This marks North Korea's first ballistic missile provocation since President Lee Jae-myung took office in early June as well. The authorities also shared intelligence on the launch with the U.S. and Japan, saying Seoul's military is maintaining a full readiness posture. South Korea's top office also said the National Security Council held an emergency military readiness review to analyze the impact of the launch on national security.
Right, and the timing is crucial as well, with a big event coming next week.
That's right, Angie. The latest provocation comes ahead of the APEC meeting next week, with U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping among leaders set to visit South Korea. And there is potential for a meeting between the leaders of the U.S. and China during the event. North Korea could be attempting to garner attention ahead of that meeting. The launch comes 12 days after a military parade was held in Pyongyang as well to mark the 80th anniversary of the Workers' Party, where it showed off its arsenal, including the latest ICBM, something analysts say could be tested in the near future as well. We're expecting more details on the launch, so I'll be back with more in a later newscast.
All right, do keep us updated. And on the economic front, South Korean officials are now heading back to Washington to fine-tune the details of the Korea-U.S. tariff negotiations. Our Kim Bo-kyung tells us more.
Presidential Chief of Staff for Policy Kim Yong-bum and Industry Minister Kim Jong-kwan depart for Washington, D.C. on Wednesday once again for tariff negotiations with the U.S. It has only been a few days since the two officials returned from earlier trips to D.C., during which they talked to U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick to finalize the details of the $350 billion investment package. Though there are still 1 or 2 remaining issues, the Presidential Chief of Staff for Policy had said Seoul had made substantive progress in those talks.
The chances of reaching an agreement have grown compared to previous U.S. visit, especially with the upcoming APEC leaders meeting.
The key issue of the tariff negotiations has been over South Korea's investment package in the U.S. to reduce tariffs on key products such as automobiles. Washington has been demanding a full cash investment or an upfront equity contribution, which Seoul says is unrealistic given the country's foreign exchange constraints. But as the U.S. now appears to have stepped back from this demand, the negotiations recently gained momentum.
Not really. If they were, we wouldn't be able to solve the problem. The U.S. has accepted much of our view on that issue.
With the two officials heading back to the U.S. to finalize the details, expectations are growing that the two countries could reach a dramatic agreement during the potential summit between the two leaders, as President Trump is to visit Korea soon for the APEC leaders meeting. Meanwhile, the impact of U.S. tariffs is starting to show in Korea Customs Service data, with exports to the U.S. for the first 20 days of October plunging 24.7% compared to the previous year. Even considering there were 2 less working days during this period, exports to the U.S. were still down more than 10%. Total exports to all countries from October 1st to 20th totaled $30.15 billion, down 7.8% from the same period last year, largely due to that fall in exports to the U.S. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, despite trade tensions between Washington and Beijing, U.S. President Donald Trump said he expects a fair deal with China, saying he expects to meet his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping in South Korea soon. He also highlighted the success of his tariff policies, citing trade negotiations with South Korea, Japan, and the European Union. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump has expressed optimism about upcoming trade negotiations with China, saying he expects to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping in South Korea soon to discuss a wide range of issues. Speaking at a White House luncheon on Monday, President Trump said he believes the two countries will do well in the talks. The remarks come as President Trump moves to impose an additional 100% tariff on Chinese goods starting November 1st. If implemented, the overall tariffs that China must pay on exports to the United States could climb as high as 157%. The measure follows Beijing's decision to tighten export controls on rare earth materials, which Washington sees as a strategic challenge to global supply chains. Despite the rising trade tensions, Trump emphasized that he maintains a good personal relationship with President Xi and expects to reach what he described as a fair deal. He said he hopes both sides can benefit, but stressed that any deal must be fair. The U.S. leader added that a meeting with President Xi would be very successful, noting that global attention is focused on the upcoming talks. Still, Trump acknowledged that there remains a chance that the meeting might not happen, saying that if someone were to call it off, it would not be due to hostility, but rather part of the business process. Meanwhile, Trump also highlighted what he views as the broader success of his tariff policies, saying Washington has done well in trade negotiations with South Korea, Japan, and the European Union. He argued that the use of tariffs has strengthened America's negotiating position, helped reduce trade deficits, drawn in new foreign investments, and boosted domestic manufacturing. Pundits say Washington is aiming to use this combination of high tariffs and direct diplomacy to pressure Beijing into concessions, while reassuring allies that Washington remains committed to fair and reciprocal trade. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And the international gold spot price, which had hit record highs in recent days, has plunged more than 5%. Spot gold fell to $4,115.26 per ounce as of 1:45 p.m. U.S. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday, down about 5.5% from the previous day. This marks the steepest one-day drop in almost 5 years since August 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic. Gold futures also saw a sharp decline. On the New York Mercantile Exchange, December delivery futures closed down 5.7% from the previous day. Following an investigation into Korean nationals suspected of running phishing scams in Cambodia, the South Korean government has called for stronger efforts to deal with related issues. Our Park Won-woo reports.
Stronger efforts with an extraordinary response, not business as usual, are needed to tackle international fraud cases. That's what President Lee Jae-myung ordered during a cabinet meeting on Tuesday, following the recent surge in scam cases linked to Koreans in Cambodia.
국가 권력과도 관계가 있다는 설이 있을 정도이기 때문에 쉽게 뿌리 뽑혀지지는 않을 것 같아요. 인력이든 조직이든 필요하면 최대한 확보해 드릴 테니까 새로운 시각으로 좀 접근해 주시길 바랍니다.
He added he's asked for the National Intelligence Service to get involved, citing the crime's international scope. He also urged cooperation among other relevant authorities, including the Foreign Ministry, to think from a new perspective when dealing with the issue. The Foreign Ministry held a separate meeting the same day to assess the situation and review detailed measures. Officials discussed ways of running the Korea-Cambodia Joint Task Force agreed last week, boosting embassy personnel and strengthening cooperation between police authorities of both countries. Meanwhile, investigations into the repatriated Korean suspects from Cambodia, allegedly involved as perpetrators in phishing schemes targeting fellow Koreans, are picking up speed. As of Tuesday, at least 49 of the 64 people transferred to Korea by Cambodian authorities have been arrested, with more to be added, raising expectations that the probe will gain even greater momentum. Park Gon-woo, Arirang News.
A design event in its 12th year is transforming Seoul's Dongdaemun Design Plaza into a hub of creativity, offering visitors and fans of design the chance to experience how design connects daily life with art and innovation. Arirang was there.
At one of Seoul's most iconic landmarks, creativity fills every corner. From experimental furniture to pop-up markets and AI-themed conferences, Seoul Design Week 2025 at Dongdaemun Design Plaza is where the city's design spirit comes alive. The festival brings together exhibitions, talks, and visitor-driven programs under the theme Design, Designer, Design Life. The week-long event, held until October 26, explores how design can be found in every aspect of life.
Seoul is known as one of the world's trendiest cities. We are establishing ourselves as category creators, pioneers who set new trends. Just as K-pop became its own global genre, I hope Seoul's design will emerge as a genre of its own.
That vision is reflected across the week's programs, where design is not only displayed, but lived.
This is Seating Seoul, where 100 designers have reimagined the simple chair. The exhibition suggests that chairs can reflect our bodies, lifestyles, and even our society.
At the visitor favorite design fair, Seoul Design Week features popular lifestyle brands like Finca and 60 Seconds, while the design conference gathers creators and scholars to discuss AI, sustainability, and the future of aesthetics. For emerging designers, the event also offers a chance to collaborate with major companies, giving those with limited funding the opportunity to bring their creative ideas to life. That's what the Young Designers Special Exhibition is all about. The design fair is also a space for introspection.
I think this fair isn't just about showing our products to other people. It's about reflecting on how we see and interpret the world as designers.
Beyond form and function, Seoul Design Week places people at the center of creativity.
This year's Seoul Design Week focuses on design embedded in daily life, spotlighting both the creators and the consumers who appreciate with a designer's mindset.
From chairs that tell human stories to conferences that envision the future of creativity, Seoul Design Week 2025 shows that design is a living language of how Koreans express their culture to the world. Hyun-yeong, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. Plans for a Trump-Putin summit in Budapest have been shelved as both Washington and Moscow acknowledge there are no plans for a meeting in the immediate future. The delay follows stalled diplomacy to end the war in Ukraine, with neither side showing signs of compromise. The White House confirmed the pause after a call on Monday between U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov resulted in no progress. Lavrov said Russia's position has remained unchanged since the August Alaska summit, when Trump and Putin last met in person. President Donald Trump later told reporters on Tuesday he didn't want a wasted meeting, saying talks would resume only when there is something real to discuss. Vladimir Putin had reportedly proposed trading parts of occupied Kherson and Zaporizhia for control of Donetsk, a plan Trump rejected, urging both armies to stop fighting and go home. In Israel on Tuesday, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance downplayed fears that the Israel-Hamas ceasefire could collapse, saying recent progress gives him great optimism the ceasefire is going to hold. Speaking at a joint news conference with Trump envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, Vance said he will not set deadlines for Hamas's disarmament or the return of the hostage remains, stressing that both will take a little time. He warned that very bad things could happen if Hamas fails to comply, but said pressure must be balanced with patience. U.S. officials privately fear the truce remains vulnerable after weekend clashes that killed 2 Israeli soldiers and dozens of Palestinians. Vance's trip aims to keep Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu committed to the U.S. brokered deal. Witkoff told Israeli counterparts their response to Hamas must stay proportional, as the next 30 days will determine whether the peace plan's second phase can begin. In Paris on Tuesday morning, former President Nicolas Sarkozy became the first ex-leader of France since World War II to go to jail. He began a 5-year sentence for conspiring to finance his 2007 campaign with money from late Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi. The 70-year-old arrived at La Santé prison greeted by supporters shouting his name as police cordoned off the streets. He will be held in an isolation wing for his own safety in a small cell with a bed, desk, shower, and TV, and allowed 1 hour of daily exercise. The former president maintains his innocence, writing on social media that truth will prevail, and his lawyer has filed an immediate appeal for release. President Emmanuel Macron calls his predecessor's detention a human matter, while France's justice minister vowed to ensure Sarkozy's safety in jail. In London on Tuesday, a brain surgery patient played the clarinet during her 4-hour brain surgery. 65-year-old Denise Bacon, who suffers from Parkinson's disease, reportedly showed immediate improvement in her finger movement. The surgery at King's College Hospital involved deep brain stimulation using implanted electrodes to ease symptoms of Parkinson's disease. The patient stayed awake under local anesthetic while the neurosurgeon adjusted electrical currents to the affected areas of her brain. Doctors said her hand control improved instantly, allowing her to play the clarinet smoothly on the operating table, something she hasn't done for 5 years. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
The sudden early winter chill has certainly made it feel like the season has changed overnight. While we had one last cool start this morning, relief is on the way. Temperatures will jump by over 10 degrees later today, bringing back that mild seasonal autumn weather we have been missing. Meanwhile, the East Coast remains wet with rain expected throughout the day. East of Gangwon-do will see 20 to 60 millimeters. The east coast of Gyeongsang-Buk-do province will see 5 to 40 millimeters. But again, this afternoon, the warm-up is ahead with highs going 1 to 5 degrees higher. Seoul topping out at 19 degrees, Gwangju, Jeju both at 22 degrees. And from tomorrow, we'll finally recover back to the seasonal average with morning temperatures returning to around 10 degrees. The forecast for the rest of the week remains near average, but by early next week, morning temperatures will plunge back down to early winter-like conditions.
That's all we have for today's noon edition of Arirang News. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Stay tuned.